as always, we'll start with the AFC, move to the interconference games, and then do the NFC. So, Bills versus Dolphins, these are two teams that won in week one. Both of them looked fairly impressive while doing so. Apparently Josh Allen is wearing some sort of protective glove on his hand. I'm not too sure what's going on with that. But Miami also has some injury issues coming into week two. Now, of these two teams, even though they both won, I thought that Buffalo looked more impressive in their victory between the two teams. Josh Allen had his interceptions under control. Overall, I thought they just looked better than Miami did in their victory. Also, historically, Josh Allen is 10-2 against Miami in his career, and Tua Tagovailoa is 1-6 against the Buffalo Bills in his career. So I'm going to go with Buffalo here, but I think this is going to be a very close game. Maybe even the best game of this week. Jets versus Titans. I was really not impressed with how the Titans looked against the Bears last week. Obviously they got an early lead, but they had a complete offensive collapse down the stretch. Obviously Will Levis with the game-sealing pick six, and to me it just showed a lack of discipline in that team. And even though the Jets are coming off a loss, they lost to the San Francisco 49ers, who, depending on who you ask, is either the first or second best team in the entire league. The absolute worst spot you could put them probably is like number 3. And I honestly thought, even though there were a couple issues, I thought that the Jets looked decent, and they honestly held their weight against the San Francisco 49ers until late. And I think overall they looked better against a better opponent than the Titans did, so I'm going to take the Jets here. Browns versus Jaguars. Now, the Browns are coming off of both these teams are coming off of a loss. Pretty sure the Jags lost last week. 99% confident they lost. But now you have two issues here where it depends on the game plan. Now, like I called out last week, Trevor Lawrence isn't being allowed to throw the ball enough. That's an issue I've had with this coaching staff for a while. You need to just let him fling the ball. But the issue in Cleveland is Deshaun Watson has completely regressed, and now he has this new pending lawsuit that just came out, I think, the day after their game last week. So even though these are both two teams that were kind of lackluster, in my opinion, last week, I think with all the off-field stuff and all those other sorts of distractions, and this being a home game for Jacksonville, I will give a slight edge to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I think this is going to be a pretty close game overall. Raiders versus Ravens. Ravens coming off of a loss week 1 against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mentioned that I had some issues with their offensive line in the first half of that game, although it seemed like by the second half they had cleaned that up a bit. Now obviously you have a guy in Max Crosby on the other side who can cause some disruptions if there are any weaknesses in that line. But you have that two-pronged attack of Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. You have some good receivers. And this Raiders team, they did win last week, didn't they? I can't remember off the top of my head. But overall, I think the easy money here is on the Ravens. Steelers versus Broncos. Steelers coming off of a good win last week, where they had Justin Fields under center. I do not yet know who their quarterback is going to be in this game, but the Broncos, they are coming off a loss against my Seattle Seahawks, and even though they did keep it close, like I pointed out in my post-game review, I felt like the coaching staff really does not trust Bo Nix. They ran a very simple offense, lots of runs. Basically, all of the passes were behind the line of scrimmage, things of that nature. And I think when you're going up against this Steelers defense, their offense is not going to get off the ground. And even though I don't have a ton of faith in either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, I think they are good enough to, at the very least, do what Pittsburgh did last week, get them into field goal range over and over and over, and allow the kicker to get 3 points. And then the defense will stop Denver, and the kicker will get 3 points again. And I think it's going to be that sort of game, and I expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this year. The Kansas City Chiefs are coming off of a win week 1, and the Bengals are coming off of a shock upset loss to the New England Patriots. I mentioned in my week 1 review, the Bengals have been woefully unprepared in the first 2 weeks of the season under their current head coach. They have consistently, with this coaching staff, opened up the season in a hole, down 1 or 2 games to start. And this Kansas City Chiefs team, they showed week 1 against the Ravens, who were considered to be one of the Super Bowl contenders this year, that they do not have a Super Bowl slump. They have added speed, and they are still hungry, and I think this Bengals team, they could keep it competitive if they want to, but it's going to be a mentality issue, it's going to be a coaching issue, and I'm not sure if they have what it takes. I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game, especially with this being at Arrowhead. Now we come to our interconference teams, our games rather, the Indianapolis Colts versus the Green Bay Packers. Now, of course, Jordan Love is not going to be playing, and the Indianapolis Colts, I love that head coaching staff. I love Station, Anthony Richardson. As I've said many times, I'm a big fan of him, and they really did impress me in week 1. I would like to see Richardson throw the ball a little bit more. I think he only had 9 completions in week 1, and that is a continuation of what he was doing before going down with injury last season, finishing games with barely any completions. I would like to see him throw the ball more, especially down beyond the line of scrimmage. But this Indianapolis Colts team, I don't think they're a contender, but I think they could be a playoff team potentially. At the very least, especially if Richardson stays healthy, they'll be better than they were last year. And I just think with the injuries at the moment, Green Bay is going to start the season, unfortunately for them, in a hole. And I'm not sure if they'll be able to claw out of it, so I'm going to take the Colts. But at least, from what I have read, Jordan Love avoided any sort of major injury, so that's good. The Chargers versus the Panthers. I said last week, I thought that the Panthers were finally going to put things together. I thought that Bryce Young was going to finally be more comfortable. That was not the case in week 1. And as I said in my review video, I had a rule last year where I'm going to bet against the Panthers every single week until they prove me wrong. And I'm reinstituting that rule for this week. So because it's the Panthers, I'm automatically picking the other team. But even if I didn't have that rule in place, I'd still go Chargers here, obviously. Seahawks versus Patriots. The Patriots, they just, like I said, shocked everybody with that Bengals win. I still think that their offensive line is really bad. I still don't think we're going to see Drake May in this game. But, maybe they do it again, and if they end up winning again, maybe it's time to start looking at them a little bit more seriously. But I think with all the conditions going into last week, I might not maybe necessarily say it's a fluke, but I don't think it's going to be indicative of their season. Seattle, we did have some issues in week 1 that I was concerned about, but overall I think our defense should be good enough to exploit the issues that offensive line has. I think our offense should be competent enough to make up for it on the other side. I'm going to have Seattle winning that game. And Bears versus Texans. The Bears, that defense carried them to a come-from-behind victory last week. Caleb Williams looked a little bit shaky, under 100 yards, but they got the victory last week against the Tennessee Titans. The Houston Texans, though, are a different animal. This is, again, a lot of people have this team in the top 4, top 5 for the odds to win the Super Bowl. Last I checked, I think right now they are the 4th favorite to win the Super Bowl, behind the Chiefs, 49ers, and the Lions. I think it's Chiefs, 49ers, Lions, Texans, Ravens right now for Super Bowl odds last I looked. So I'm going to take the Texans here to get that victory. Now I move to the NFC. The San Francisco 49ers versus the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings, they looked better than a lot of people, myself included, expected last week. Sam Darnold looked very comfortable in that role starting as quarterback. And the defense looked better than I thought it would. But the San Francisco team is, like I said, a whole different animal. I think Minnesota will get some shock victories this season, but I don't think this will be one of them. I'm going to take the San Francisco 49ers. Saints versus Cowboys. Derek Carr looked really, really good week 1 operating in that offense, and the Saints team overall was very impressive in their victory. The Cowboys also coming off a win, also very impressive. Again, this is a Buffalo-Miami situation for me because it's still early in the season. I think that these teams going up against other teams that are on a similar level to them, they still kind of have to carve out their spot in the proverbial standings in my mind. I think Dallas was moderately more impressive for me last week, so I'm going to give them the nod in this matchup, but I think this one could be a coin toss. The New York Giants versus the Washington Commanders. This New York team is an absolute disaster. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. That week 1 loss against Minnesota, they didn't even really look competitive, and that was an issue for me. It'd be one thing if you lost but kept it close, but they didn't even look competitive. And I'm going to give the nod here to the Washington Commanders. I don't have any faith in this New York team at the moment. Now, I always pick an upset every week. At the very least, I try to pick an upset every week. And I think this game here could be our opportunity for the upset. The Detroit Lions, they win in overtime last week. But that was concerning for me. Again, this is a team who is, right now, I believe, the 4th odds-on favorites to win the Super Bowl. And there were times where they were really struggling to get going on both sides of the ball. And I was kind of a little bit iffy on how they looked, and especially Jared Goff. There were multiple moments in that game where Jared Goff did not look comfortable whatsoever. On the other hand, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruised to victory last week. Baker Mayfield threw 4 touchdowns. He looked extremely competent. Looked like an absolute killer. And I think this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is just firing on all cylinders at the moment. I don't know how deep they can go or how long they can carry on this sort of momentum. But right now, I think they have a lot of momentum. And I think the Lions, although they did win that game, they were not very convincing for me. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could get the upset here. Rams versus Cardinals. Obviously, this is an NFC West divisional matchup here. The Cardinals did look pretty good last week, but that Rams offense, I mean, we saw what they were capable of. Almost winning that game. I just think that they are so deadly, and they can hit you from so many different angles. And this Cardinals team still still feels like a team that's in a bit of a weird limbo spot. So even though the Cardinals did perform better than expected last week, I'm going to give the nod to the Rams here. And finally, Falcons versus Eagles. The Falcons really disappointed me coming into this season. They were a dark horse candidate for me. They made some big improvements over the offseason, brought in Kirk Cousins. I thought they were a team with a lot of weapons. I thought they were a team that could surprise. Well, maybe not surprise, because a lot of talking heads were talking about their improvements, but I thought they were a team that, had the potential to maybe shock some people and go deep in the playoffs. But Kirk Cousins looked very uncomfortable last week. I watched this video breaking down his sort of footwork, and they're showing that the way he's planting his feet right now is different than any other point in his career. He's barely putting any weight down on his plant leg. So it shows either maybe he's not fully healed yet, or he does not trust that leg. So he's not getting the same power on his throws. And I just think that this Eagles team, if you show any weakness against them, they're going to capitalize. And I think they're going to get the victory there. So these are my predictions for week 2. The Bills being the Dolphins, Jets being the Titans, the Jaguars being the Browns, Ravens being the Raiders, the Steelers being the Broncos, and the Chiefs furthering the Bengals' misery. Our interconference games, I have the Colts beating the Packers, the Chargers beating the Panthers, the Seahawks beating the Patriots, and the Texans beating the Bears. And then the NFC, I have the Niners beating the Vikings, the Cowboys beating the Saints, the Commanders beating the Giants, the Buccaneers upsetting the Lions, the Rams beating the Cardinals, and the Eagles beating the Falcons. So those are my predictions for week 2. Like I said, the day this video goes up, Bills versus Dolphins will be in the bag, so we'll at least have that one down today. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this almost every single day. Till next time, guys.